Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Keystone, the podcast, videocast, live, informational discussion. There's a lot of things we could talk about it. One thing it is for sure is it's going to be the definitive documentary on elephants because it's the first kind of movie of its sort. Hey, everybody. How are you today? I'm Eric Crown, your host, and today we're going to talk about one of our favorite things in the world, keystones, and especially elephants. Producer Sierra Williams is working behind the scenes here today to make sure the show runs, and we got all the elements we need. So we're really excited to be here today to talk to you because we have been working a lot on elephant projects. Um, Now, real fast, I'm going to have a quick Sunpacks lemonade. Stay hydrated. I'm not doing an ad for them, I swear. They'd probably be upset if they saw me doing that anyway. But it's good to stay hydrated. So hopefully, if you guys are out there, if you're out today in this sweltering heat, like we're seeing in Florida, please make sure to stay hydrated. And staying hydrated is one of a really important aspect of what elephants have to go through when they're out in the field, especially when they're being used for things like logging or other terrible industries. Elephants require a lot of water, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But first of all, let's talk about elephants. Just go back to the basics. This is about Elephants 101, and there are two basic sub kind of groups, as they consider them, of elephants. One would be the African elephants, and the other would be Asian elephants, which also includes India. Now, you can see here in the African elephants that they're very dispersed through different areas, and a lot of this has to do with terrain. Um, Now, that is where they live in the wild. Now, that's where they live in the wild. This is where elephants were intended to be. Now, you have to imagine elephants have been around for a very long time, and they've only been in these areas until humans stole them and took them into zoos and other work areas all around the world. And that's what we kind of want to talk today about. We want to talk about wild elephants, captive elephants. But first of all, it's important to note that there are two types of elephants. So different ones have been used in different zoos and circuses and different ways to exploit. So once we know, okay, we have these two basic ones. Now they've been around for a long time. They were used in wars way back in Thailand, which and or Burma, all those different areas. Which Thailand used to be Siam, and their elephant army is very famous. So you've got them that they've been harnessed and used by people for a long time, but this always came with a lot of abuse. With elephants, because they are so out of our realm, when they become captive, their spirit has to be broken. So any captive elephant you see has gone through a very torturous process where they're placed into a small box, they're stabbed over and over by spears to learn to be afraid of spears and to be afraid of what they call bull hooks, which are small pointy hooks that are used to control elephants, especially when you deal with the public. So, these any captive elephant has been through this sort of torture. Now, wild elephants, and with the experience Sierra and I have had in Asia, the green areas with the Asian elephants have been mostly captive situations. In Thailand, it's very dangerous to be in areas where there are wild elephants. And as a matter of fact, recently a tourist was killed in Thailand by a wild elephant. Um, it does happen out there. Also, though, on equal ground, a tourist was killed by a captive elephant as well. So Thailand has its own challenges, but generally, you will never see a wild elephant in Asia. They're way up in the hills. They don't like to be around people, and they're just doing their best to survive, stay out of the way. Now, African elephants, the entire tourist industry is built on seeing African elephants. which means you go in a Land Rover and your cruiser, and you go and you enjoy them, but you do not get near them, you don't touch them, and you never get out of the car because they're okay with seeing these trucks, but not necessarily with seeing people. Now let's talk a little bit more about these populations. So there's the African forest elephant, which is critically endangered. The African savanna elephant, which is what Sierra and I just saw recently when we were down in the Serengeti and Ngorongoro and a few other places in Africa. And those are completely wild, estimated around 300,000. Then there's the Asian elephant, which again also is in India, but well, I guess not in this one, but so this is all Asian. Approximately, now they are endangered. Approximately population of around 40 to 50,000, and we have to remember that about 3 to 5,000 of those are in um, captivity in Asia. Now, Botswana is the home to the largest elephant population. Zimbabwe, which we found out recently, was involved in some interesting elephant swaps. They have the second largest elephant population, and India Asian elephant population is around 17,000, which is a significant decrease from 1 million a decade ago. How do we lose all these elephants? Why are they critically endangered, and endangered? Um, a lot of it has to do with ivory, with encroachment. They call it habitat loss, but we have to remember that that's all sanctioned. These are developers building homes. These are oil and gas exploration. Companies like Exxon are out there exploring, kill the, you know, as a response, they end up killing a lot of gorillas, elephants, and other animals that get in the way, and human elephant conflict, which unfortunately is a big issue once you get out to it's a big issue once you get out into the more remote areas, because what happens is elephants will come in to people's crops and start to eat them in the middle of the night because they're starving because of encroachment. When city planners plan on places, they look at square footage, they look at size of it, they look at the population it can hold, people, and but that's all based on residential areas, roads, offices, etc. It never takes into account the wildlife, especially if that wildlife is huge. And these elephants, I mean, they're one of the most loved mammals in the world, but they're also one of the most endangered because where are they going to go? How are they really going to fight back? They are in a fight for their life right now, which is why we're making Keystone. Aside from the ecological importance of elephants, which means they're keystone species, which means that if they are removed from their habitat, the biodiversity of where they live will collapse and just might disappear. And if it doesn't collapse, it's going to be severely hobbled to the point where it's going to be off balance, and a lot of bad results will come out of that. So that's the environmental side. But when we think about elephants, we have to think about their suffering. They're sentient beings, and we show in the documentary it's been proven that they are sentient. People know they're sentient. That means that they can think about what you and I think about, and they're conscious of what you and I are conscious about. So when they're in captivity, they get this mental condition called zoochosis, where they just sway back and forth. If you ever know anybody that's been to the zoo and the elephants do this, they are exhibiting what's called zoochosis, which means they are so stressed out that all they can think to do is just rock back and forth. A lot of animals exhibit the stress through that pattern. So, elephants, you've got the wild elephants like in Asia that are somewhat left alone. Then you've got the captive elephants that are used for entertainment and logging and other practices. And then you've got the captive elephants outside of Asia and Africa. Now we expand the rest of the world. Well, in the 1800s, zoos started showing up around the world. And they said, look at this fascinating thing. And they stole all of these animals from Africa. zebras, elephants, gorillas, you name it. They stole all of these animals and they put them into zoos for the public that lives in wherever, Baltimore, St. Louis, whatever. No, what are we going to do today? Let's take Johnny to see the elephant in the zoo. It became a sort of cheap babysitter for a lot of parents. Um, Now, the problem with all that is that zoos, since the 1800s, have been stealing animals. Now they breed them. And we have this whole a mass amount of captive animals that have to live inside of these zoos. And let's see, we're looking at the numbers from those. What did we find out? We found out that there is approximately, let's see. Okay. Well, we'll come back. We'll come back to the numbers that are in the zoos. But what I wanted to actually talk about first is, let's see. I wanted to talk about what are some of these areas and what are the issues they have. So if they don't live in a zoo, and people say, well, they're in a zoo, so they're protected and they're very happy because they don't have to worry about all the other threats. Well, they have their own set of problems. So the question is, as the AZA, which is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, said, is it better to be free and fly as a bird and be killed by a predator with a short lifespan, or is it better to live in a gilded cage and be safe from predators? Uh, we think that, of course, animals would always choose freedom. I don't, it's just something within everybody. So the problem is with elephants out in the wild, they haven't been given enough protection. Enforcement is always an issue in conservation, and it's the same with elephants. They're not given enough protection. Right now, the monies that are raised for sanctuaries come from the sanctuaries efforts. There is literally no government helping make sure that these really prized resources are safe and that these prized beings are alive with us. There's no protection given to them. And we see that with the industry as it is. So here it is. This is fantastic. This is seethewild.org, and this is elephant threats. Illegal poaching in the ivory trade. That is in Africa. That's in Asia. It's all over the world. And whether they're coming out and poaching the elephants while they're out in their nature, or they're coming and digging up the carcasses of captive elephants like they do in Thailand to try to steal the ivory. Ivory continues to be a big problem. Why is ivory a problem? It sounds like something from, the 80s. Ivory is a problem because people want keyboards made out of ivory. They want things made out of ivory. They want things carved out of ivory. It's supposedly a luxury good that if you have ivory, there's something really important about it. Any ivory creates the death of elephants. So the Western market has a lot of responsibility to bear in the reduction of elephants and the near death of elephants, and the sliding scale towards extinction of these. So yes, so ivory is a major, major problem, and that poaching is a big problem. It's always been a big problem. Now this one says demand and luxury products for China. It's not just China. We can't just blame it on them. It's easy in conservation for people to say Chinese medicine, but that's not always the bad guy. The bad guy is the ivory piano, the Steinway that you're watching somebody play at an orchestra hall. Now, supposedly they don't really make them with ivory anymore, but the old ones are still there. The ivory that's being sold on markets for a lot of money at auctions and places. Small carvings that are made out of ivory. We even saw tusks with carvings as stories inside of the tusks in Buddhist monasteries in Thailand. So it's a very complicated relationship of elephants and how they are seen. Now, loss of habitat, as you can see here as well. Obviously, we're encroaching everywhere into their world. And that might be where we live, but again, it's oil and gas exploration that is going in and killing a lot of animals as well. So it's not really like we need all this oil and gas to survive. We're talking purely here about profit, destroying the natural order in the natural world. And the last part is capture and tourism, which is a big problem. But the best part about this one is that we can change this. Now, this kind of goes over all the other aspects we were talking about. But here's the thing, you don't have to go to the zoo. You don't have to buy an ivory carving. You don't have to go ride an elephant if you go to Asia. You shouldn't. As a matter of fact, you should never touch an elephant. Um, we are in such a demand market right now that as a tourist, you what you want will determine what is offered. You don't have to buy what's offered. You have to show them what you want, and then they will offer you something to buy. That's how tourism works around the world. We've seen it in Thailand. You know, Thailand used to be the elephant riding capital. Now, if you go there, they're like, no, 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 do not ride the elephants. Here's an ethical sanctuary. Here's an ethical sanctuary. People said we don't want it. Now everybody continues to do ethical sanctuaries, and they really have phased it out. You might find one or two unethical ones here or there, but that's the beauty of it is we have the power to change it. That's what Keystone is about. It's about looking at the problems facing elephants worldwide and finding out solutions. Well, how do we solve the problem in Asia? We stop supporting, and believe me, people will respond quickly because money is tight over there. Stop supporting anybody that abuses elephants. How do we help Africa? We stop supporting any ivory. We stop supporting any form of African exhibit at the zoo, African zoo, elephant exhibit, because they still round them up and sell them to zoos, even though technically they shouldn't due to the Endangered Species Act, which, crazy enough, they're trying to loosen right now. And that would be an absolute ecocide for us. So, oh yeah. So, we want to know from you guys, have you ever visited an elephant sanctuary or seen elephants in the wild? Tell us about your experience because the more we can learn about what options there are for experiences, the more people can find out how they can best support their fascination of elephants, their love for nature, and the elephants themselves. Now, we talk a lot about what's happening out there. Again, this is sort of the 101. What's happening is we have lost almost all of our elephants in the last 100 years. And another aspect in Thailand is illegal logging. Thailand used to be 90% covered by forests. Now it's 30%. And they lost all that in a short 100 years for logging. Now, well, how do they log? They log with elephants. And the crazy thing is, if you go to National Geographic or somewhere, they're going to show this story. It's a positive story. Oh, look at this. This is really great. Look at how ecological this is. Forcing an animal to burn their own village to the ground for your profit is not ecological. And that's irresponsible reporting by National Geographic and other things. You know, using these animals like that is not in any way acceptable. And that's what we have found with our travel. And that's what we want to talk about in Keystone, which is why we're putting together some of the most amazing experts from around the world to talk about why elephants need to be in nature and the ones that aren't in nature, what can we do to stop this continual torture of these poor things? I wanted to share another thing actually, and I wanted to share this with everybody. This is the other reason elephants are kept is zoo babies, and we talked about it in Harambe a little bit, but every year they do, as I'm sure most of you know, it's called husbandry when they are breeding these different animals. Now, due to the Endangered Species Act, a lot of zoos will each breed a separate animal. Then they have a name the baby contest, and that baby goes to another zoo to make money. And they just generally like really pump it up. Everybody falls in love with the baby, and the baby leaves. So this is what they call zoo babies, and this is a yearly event. Now, look how many elephant babies there are, and this is meant to be heartwarming. And everyone that knows that we love elephants always says to us, look at how beautiful this is. Look at all these babies. Isn't that cute? Well, the problem is these elephants are now doomed to a life of up to 100 years in captivity, performing zoochosis, being stressed out, and never having the opportunity to be there, be alive, to be outside in the wild, or to be a keystone species and fulfill their very role in the ecological puzzle. Because we didn't make the world, and nature certainly did not intend to create a super important animal that our survival depends on so that we could put it in a cement box and charge $5. I don't think that was part of nature's plan, and I don't think anybody does. And we have a growing consciousness now, which has started years ago. But as we see our world more and more destroyed, and especially right now, as we're watching all protections for the environment disappear, we all need to speak up as much as we can. And one way we can do this is by demanding that elephants are treated as sentient beings. How do you do that? Don't go to the zoo. Don't go to the zoo. You could even call your zoo if you wanted to and ask them if they still have an elephant exhibit. And then tell them that you'd rather not spend that money, because eventually management is going to question it. They removed elephants from the zoo, the Dublin Zoo. They removed them. Now they're supposed to be removing them from a few other zoos. The problem is a lot of times they're going into new zoos, which doesn't solve the issue at all. So what we need is to stop breeding these sentient beings, and we need to start protecting the wild ones because we need to keep them in the wild. And what are the dangers? As we talked about, poaching, encroachment, which is considered habitat loss, which is generally business related, ivory, and then you have captivity. You have zoos. You have elephant rides. You have, in Thailand, they're considered transportation. They don't even have rights. So it's the same as buying and selling a car. So, that maybe that's how people thought when they weren't educated 100 years ago. But we have to remember that people didn't have the information we have now 100 years ago. So we have to always be looking at our world through the most modern of eyes to understand what it's all there for. That's why science is there, to elevate our level of discourse and comprehension about the world around us. And the more we can learn about the world around us, the more we know how important it is. And the more we know how important it is, the more we know how we have to save it. And, we've been talking to a lot of people about this project. There's a lot of people out there trying to save the planet. There's a lot of good people out there, and we are all finding each other. We have to stay united. If you can't donate money to the project, no problem. Please share it. And if you can't share it, you don't want to share it, that's okay too. But what we do ask is that you talk to people. Bring the topic up. Don't let these topics fade. If the press isn't going to cover them, and it's just us documentarians covering them, and we can only do so much, it's up to everybody out there. You are all the seeds of the future, the hope of the future, by talking about these topics. So we're going to continue our elephant education over the next couple weeks, but we wanted to start with just the basics to begin with. The basics of the elephants, who they are, where they live, and why they're facing what they're facing. And unfortunately, we don't have positive elephant stories to tell right now. Maybe we can change that as a group together. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for checking out our conversation today. Please leave your comments down there. Let's keep the discussion going. Let's keep talking about these elephants. Let's keep the momentum going. If you can back the film, we really appreciate it. We need to try to raise as much as we can to include as many stories from around the world as we can. We've already started principal photography. This is not a movie that may or may not happen. This is a movie that is in production. This is a movie that we've just finished Thailand and Africa, and we need your help to wrap up some other areas and to get the story out, because this is going to be the definitive movie about elephants. This is going to be the movie that can lay out the argumentation of why they shouldn't be captive and why we need to protect them in the wild. And we want all of the voices of elephant that are out there to be part of the movie, and for it to be a one collective voice to speak in unity and to say the same thing. So thank you, everybody, for joining. It's always great to be able to see so many elephant supporters, people that care so much about elephants. and let us know what you think. Let us know if you have any other questions too, or topics you'd love for us to cover. This was the basics, the Elephant 101. In case you've heard about what's happening and you wanted to learn a little bit more, again, we wanted to just talk about the types of elephants, the fact that they're sentient, they're endangered, and we're losing them fast. So let us know more about what you want to talk about. And we hope everybody has a great day. We'll see you tomorrow for some more.